Hello everyone, I'm Verawak, and today I'm going over 5 beginner tips for Dune Spice Wars. Dune is a 4X real-time strategy game set in the Dune universe, surprisingly enough. There's 4 different factions, each with their own perks and playstyles, and there are also different paths to victory. But in order to win, you have to know where to start, and this is where I come in. Tip number 1, scouting. You start with an ornithopter, and at the beginning you should manually scout to a region with spice fields, but after that, you can turn on the auto recon setting and let it scout to its heart's content. It'll end up scouting the map over time. This is very important. If you don't scout, you won't know where you want to expand next, and you won't know where the enemy actually is. By scouting, you'll also be able to detect raids from further away. Tip number 2, spice. He who controls the spice controls the universe. In this game, the more spice you have, the better it is. There's an imperial tax that needs to be paid every so often, and that tax is paid with spice. If you don't pay the tax, you start incurring penalties that stack. If you do pay the tax, then you get a bonus that also stacks. The bonuses and penalties are different for each faction, but we can all agree that the penalties are terrible. When you harvest spice, you can also use the spice slider. This slider is very useful if you know how to use it. Basically, you harvest a certain amount of spice, and with this slider, you can decide what percentage of it you stockpile in order to pay the imperial tax, and what percentage gets sold to the chome. So, if you focus on harvesting as much spice as possible, you can actually make a good amount of profit by selling it. Tip number 3, special regions. Some regions contain special resources or have bonuses applied to them. In terms of resources, the spice fields are the more obvious ones, but there's also rare elements, minerals, and energy sources as well. Taking control of a village in one of these regions will unlock those perks for you. Sometimes it's a new building or just more production. You can also find special regions like this one. This special region increases your Plascrete factory resource production by 100%, and by having this region, it gives you 500 free hegemony. Different special regions have a perk, and they also give you a certain amount of hegemony. By prioritizing special regions and resources, you get more production than you normally would. Tip number 4, pillaging. Pillaging Villages is a great way to get resources. Depending on which faction you are, you can get more than just Solaris when you pillage. Every time you defeat the militia of a neutral village, you have the option to take control of it or pillage it. Pillaging it will give you resources, but it'll increase the amount of authority you need to use if you ever want to take control of the village in the future. The interesting thing about Pillaging Villages is that it stops production in that village for a month, but then you can defeat the militia again and pillage it again to get resources. So what you can do is you can have one village inside your base that you never take control of, but you just keep pillaging every month to get more and more resources. Tip number 5, water. You're in a desert, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that water is very important and hard to come by. Water as a resource is needed to train units, take control of villages, and it's also used as a trading resource with various siege. Water is gathered mainly through wind traps that you build in your villages, and it can be traded with siege to gain reputation with them and obtain another resource. Some of them will trade manpower, Solaris, or even authority for water. They really want water. Also, having these alliances can be very beneficial since they give pretty great bonuses. If you play as Fremen, you can actually have alliances while not having control of the region. So that's one of the Fremen perks that I think is really nice. As soon as I discover a siege, I trade with them. I just want the resources and I want the alliance. So there you have it. Those are 5 beginner tips for Dune. There are a lot more mechanics than what was shown here. And again, each faction has a different playstyle and special faction-specific buildings and perks. I really like the non-turn-based 4X gameplay, and I'm actually really enjoying the differences between the factions. They feel very different to me, which means I need to do at least 4 playthroughs. Thanks for watching, everyone, and let me know in the comment what other videos you'd like me to tackle in terms of mechanics or factions or anything really. But just remember, you need to control the spice to control the universe.